everybody, and welcome to the Positively Disney Phone-In Podcast. Welcome to my Facebook and Twitch viewers tonight. Gosh, do we have a show in store for you. I also want to thank my sponsor, Michelle McCune, over at Ears of Experience. You can reach her at MMCKEOWN at themouseexperts.com or give her a call at 732-731779, where she will make your Disney magical vacation a reality. And something that's cool is she won't only personalize an itinerary for you, but she will also give you text access to her in the park. She does concierge service, and she even has specializations in families with special needs and military families. So give her a call when you can. Guys, I'm so excited about tonight. It's the 50th podcast, my 50th episode. I'm Kimberley Bouchard, the author of the Positively Disney book series and your host for tonight's show. And something that is so close to my heart, two things, Disney and the space program. I have always loved those two, very passionate about that, and was actually introduced to those both by one of my favorite people in the world, whom I'm dedicating this show to, my dad, Florian Borsvar. He introduced us to the space program when we were little kids, and to the magic of Disney in our living room Sunday nights with the wonderful world of Disney. You know, NASA and Disney have had such an incredible connection. I couldn't believe it. And I'm not going to talk all about it, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, which I found really, really cool. So Walt, as we know, he was a visionary. He really had a futuristic vision. And that's why we have Epcot today, which was meant to be the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. And, he actually had NASA technology that sparked some of the attractions in Future World at Epcot. It's really cool. And, it as detail is so important to Disney, they actually had astronauts on staff as the experts in ensuring that the voiceovers for some of those attractions and the rides themselves were very accurate depictions to what was in real life, what would be in real life. And, and on the flip side, Disney actually has helped NASA, some of their Imagineers and the engineers and all that, in their expansion and evaluation of their simulations to help the NASA's training program for their astronauts back in the day. And, something that was really interesting, I found out too, is there was a 3-part series. This was like way back before I was born in the 50s. And it was actually about Disney and space travel. And it was a 3-part television series. It was Man in Space, Man on the Moon, and Mars and Beyond. And Disney really, really embraced that kind of technology and the future. And he really was a man before his time in so many ways, as you know. Before I go on, I just want to welcome my husband, Jacques, Beth, Jackie, Duncan, and Cody. Thanks for joining me today. Cody, I wanted to thank. I was actually speaking at the University of Memphis via Skype today in a really cool program they have about Disney fandom. And it's an elective course that they teach at the University of Memphis. And I'm trying to and hoping that other people can take that class, because it's just incredible. It really brings together everything that Disney represents. Anyways, without further ado, I wanted to tell you about something that I don't know if you guys ever read these books when you were younger, the Dr. Seuss books. And I will never, ever forget the one called You Will Go to the Moon. And I remembered looking at it again when I had my children. And the very last page of it said, maybe someday man will go to the moon. And I thought, wow, when Dr. Seuss wrote that book, there was no idea or inclination whatsoever that man would actually get onto the moon. So my love for the space program has taken our family to a couple of shuttle launches at Kennedy Space Center. Really uncanny, the timing of that, because we lived in Alberta, Canada for that. So that was more than 2,000 miles away. But it also afforded us to go to a very big gala affair in the Saturn V building, where the Saturn V rocket is at Kennedy Space Center, and meet a whole bunch of astronauts and be able to chat with them and do photos and stuff like that. Well, I want to back up a little bit here because one of the astronauts there, Gene Cernan, was he did the second in Apollo 10 in May 18th of 1969. He circled the moon, and he was actually they were the second ones to do so. And it was actually a dress rehearsal for what was coming in July of that same year. And they did everything except for land on the moon. And something so cool that I want to share with you, and I've got a photo of something that would be similar to what he would have been wearing, is he actually wore an Ingersoll Timex watch on his mission. And this is something, I hope you can see it, but that it was just kind of a simple manual watch with a leather wristband that he wore on his mission. And I thought, boy, would that be cool to see or even have, you know? At any rate, I was very fortunate to talk with him and meet with him that during that gala time period, and really, really lovely man. And we lost him a couple of years ago now, but he was actually renowned as the last man on the moon. He was the 12th man on the moon, and his time came December 11th in 1972. So something else that is really was close to my heart is I actually was able to see the lunar landing on television in 1969. I was very, very young, but I still remember seeing this black and white visual, and my dad explaining to me, showing me in the telescope the moon and showing that man was actually landing on there, and it was absolutely unbelievable. It seemed like quite a fantasy for me. I couldn't get my head wrapped around it. Still, it's hard to imagine getting a man to the moon today, and everything else we've done on the space program. But on July 20th in 1969 in Tomorrowland in Disneyland, they actually televised the lunar landing right in Disneyland. And of course, that was the very first lunar landing touchdown by Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. And I actually had the good fortune to also meet the second man on the moon, Buzz Aldrin, and had a really nice chat with him. And I actually have a photo. I just actually could not find the photo with Buzz and I standing together, but I did find the photo that he had signed for our family that day that we had met Buzz. So guys, I want to get on with our program and invite my very good friend and two-time shuttle astronaut Winston Scott onto the show. He's a retired Navy captain, and he actually, believe it or not, to his name, has 19 hours and 26 minutes of EVAs, which are extravehicular activity, meaning that he was outside the shuttle a total of 19 hours and 26 minutes as a culmination on 2 different shuttle missions. It's just absolutely mind-boggling and downright scary, I would think, but also probably pretty cool to be doing that. And there's only a few hundred people in this world that can claim that fame of being out in space. And we are going to get Winston on the phone in a moment. Just want to say hi to Michelle, hi to Stan. Thanks for joining us. Todd and John Harrison Little. He just said he's attended 7 shuttle launches and was there for the first African-American astronaut. I believe STS-4 might launch. Very cool. Okay, we're just getting Winston on the phone now. Hi, Winston.
Yes. Hello, Kim. How are you?
I'm great. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on tonight.
Well, thank you. It's always good to talk with you, and I'm excited about being on your show tonight.
Yeah. Well, for our audience sakes, I said that you're a 2-time shuttle astronaut. Can you tell people which shuttle missions you flew and what year those were?
Yeah. My mission numbers were 72, STS 72,
okay,
which was in 1996.
Okay.
And then STS 87, which was in 1997. So I
Okay.
flew the beginning of 96 and then the end of 97. The first mission was on Endeavour. We spent 9 days in orbit. Then the
Okay.
second mission was on Columbia, 16 days in orbit.
Wow, that is a very long time to be enclosed in an area like the shuttle. Wow. Uh, that's incredible. I was just telling the folks that you did a total of 19 hours and 26 minutes outside the shuttle. I was just curious, what did it feel like? Did you see Walt Disney World while you were out there?
No, I can't say that I actually saw Walt Disney World. You're so high up in orbit,
Yeah.
it's difficult to pick out any one particular landmark. However, I would venture to say, given the right conditions and knowing exactly where to look,
Hmm.
and you could probably pick out Disney World on a given night. But you're so high up in an
Yeah.
entire city. For
Yeah.
example, the city of Miami would look just like a small cluster of lights from
Okay.
space.
Okay.
So,
All right. So maybe the all the fireworks might give it away.
well, probably not. I doubt that you could see those fireworks
Yeah.
from orbit. They look big and bright and beautiful from down here, but from
Right.
up there, they're awfully small, awfully
Yeah.
tiny.
Oh, I
Yeah.
bet. So, for our audience sake, Winston lives in the Walt Disney World vicinity, I will say. And I was just curious because you have two children that are all grown up, lovely children. Did you take your children to Walt Disney World?
Well, when my children were growing up, we weren't living in Florida. So they
Okay.
did not get to go to, well, wait a minute, let me back up. I'm trying to think because being military, we moved around quite a bit. When
Okay.
we were on the West Coast, of course, we visited Disneyland, and
Gotcha.
we were on different, in the center in Texas, we visit, so I have to think back now on and correlate what year we went well. But you know what? As I think back on it, I think the kids did have the opportunity to visit Disney World,
Okay.
as I remember now, because we were stationed in Jacksonville for a while.
Okay.
They were still in school. They had not grown up and gone off to college yet. So
Hmm.
yes, they did get to visit Disney World with us as a family. Absolutely.
Oh, very nice. Something that I haven't told people how we sort of met, and I will just share with them, and then I want to ask you something about that. So, for our listeners, so Winston met our family in front of Mission Space, but how that happened was at the gala I was speaking to you about before when we met up with Buzz Aldrin and Gene Cernan. We There was actually a silent auction, and it was a day with an astronaut in Disney. And I'll tell you, even though we live 2,000 miles away, I told my husband, we are doing this. We are going to win this. And he watched it like a hawk, and we won it. And, and it didn't matter how far we were. I was like, so cool. It was like perfect setup, the space program and Disney coming together in my heart. So I have to ask you, Winston, what prompted you to offer to spend a day at Disney with a family like that for that fundraiser?
Well, you just said the words. It was a fundraiser, and one of the things that I try to do is give back to the community. And one of the ways of giving back to the community is by helping different organizations raise money. To be honest, I don't remember which organization that was. I think it might have been the Astronaut Memorial Foundation or the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation.
Yeah.
But as
Yeah.
you know, different organizations will sponsor rallies or auctions or whatever. It may be the Red Cross, it may be some school or some
Mm.
college, or it may be a hospital, a health organization. And one of the ways that I can give back is by sort of allowing myself to be auctioned, and that's what I did in UK.
That sounds odd to say. Allow yourself to
uh,
be auctioned.
that's right. But in actuality, it's really fun for me because I get to meet different people. That's how you and I, how I met you and your family, and
Yeah.
we've been friends ever since. So
Yeah.
it's a win for the organization, and a win for me personally because I get to meet such nice people.
I have to laugh because I don't know if you've seen this live, you can see it after, but I've got a photo. I'm going to just show the folks that is us, and we're behind the scenes in Mission Space with with astronaut Mickey. And when I look at that photo, I just think, my gosh, the kids were so young. I mean, that was a while ago. And it was
It's
so,
been quite a few years now.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it was so fun that day. I mean, it was just, we just had a hoot. And so we met in front of Mission Space and went behind the scenes. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Mission Space because you and I think Alexi went together in one of the pods or whatever you call it on the orange version. Folks, by the way, that was my very first time on Mission Space. I did the orange, and my sons and my husband did the other one. Can you tell me, like, what in your does it compare to a shuttle experience? Does anything about that compare to a shuttle experience or shuttle training experience?
Well, I would say that Mission Space is a great ride, a great attraction. It's a lot of fun, but nothing can compare to riding a rocket into orbit. We just got. I think the audience will understand that.
Right.
So Disney does a fantastic job of entertaining the public and doing so in a very, very thrilling way. But it's certainly not the same as strapping onto a real rocket and going off into space.
My goodness.
Nothing that can compare with that.
Nothing compares to that. I can believe it. I mean, I would imagine that you are shaking, rattling like crazy. Are you? Are you moving about? Can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, the first stage, from left off to the first 2 minutes, is a little bit shaky and bumpy. It's not at all like it appears on TV or on the movies.
Okay.
If you watch it on the movies or TV, it looks like all of our rockets, including the shuttle, it looks like they sort of float up from the pad in slow motion. And that's because it's so big. In reality, it jumps off the pad. It leaps off the pad, kicks you in the back, and it is shaking and vibrating. By the time, I like to use this statistic, by the time you pass the top of the launch tower, you have exceeded 100 miles per hour.
Wow.
And you clear Mach 1, the speed of sound, in about roughly 45 seconds. And it just keeps going faster and faster. So it is an incredible ride. We go from Earth, sitting on the pad at 0 miles per hour, to 17,500 miles per hour in 8.5 minutes.
Wow.
So that's an incredible acceleration over that 8.5 minute period of time. So again, there's nothing that compares with it, but of course it's a rocket, and that's what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly. My goodness gracious. And it's that's something actually I don't think I knew, that it actually leaped off the pad. That is really a cool visual for that. And I imagine as you're accelerating, I mean, like anything, like whether you're in a car going 0 to 60 in a few seconds or whatever, not saying I did do a race car, but it's just like it would push you back, wouldn't it? It would kind of push you back in your seat, I would think.
It does push you back, but it pushes you back many more times than a car from going from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds or whatever.
Yeah.
If you can imagine a race car or whatever, high performance car going at that acceleration, then multiply that by some number. Also in the car, when you reach 60, you stop accelerating. See, the shuttle continues to accelerate. That's the difference. After 3 seconds in a car, you don't accelerate anymore.
Gosh.
The shuttle keeps accelerating until you reach orbit 8.5 minutes later.
Wow. That is, when you think about 8.5 minutes, that's not a long time to get that far. Wow.
Not at all. Yeah.
And when do you guys actually take your seatbelts off? Like your
different people unstrap at different times. When we reach what's called main engine cutoff, or MECO, that means you've reached your orbital target. You hit the spot in orbit and the speed in orbit you want. Then some of us begin to get out of our seats. I got out of my seat at that point.
Okay.
The pilot and the commander remained in their seats because they had another orbit adjustment burn to make. When I say burn, that means we fire the engines in a prescribed manner to produce a particular result. So I got out of my seat because I had some tasks to begin to perform. The pilot and commander stayed in their seats, and some of the other astronauts remained in their seats also. But once you're established in orbit and you got your orbit going the way you want it to go, then people can begin to unstrap and you begin to take off those bulky launch and entry suits. So
Mm,
we wear specific suits when we launch into orbit and when we re-enter from orbit.
mm.
And once you establish something, you can take those suits off, and now you're in a shirt sleeve environment.
Right. I mean, you can do all the training in the world and they can tell you what it's like, but was it really like what they had told you it was going to be like? I'm just kind of thinking, you
Well,
know?
no one can tell you what continuous weightlessness is like.
Right.
You can talk about it, you can read about it, you can see it on TV, but until you feel it, you have no idea what
Yeah.
it's like, and no one can. That there are no words to make you feel it. So
Yeah.
the first time you feel continuous weightlessness is when you're there in orbit,
Right.
and it's fun in a way. It's exciting, but it's also uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and it takes a while to get used to being there. And we
Mm,
call the getting used to process space adaptation. And
right.
sometimes people suffer space adaptation sickness.
Yeah.
Now, sickness in this case does not mean you actually get sick.
Oh,
Sometimes you can get sick on the stomach, but you may not. The entire adjustment process is called space adaptation sickness. You may
okay.
have slight headaches, you may have backaches, you may have
Right.
a sinus aches, or you may get nauseous on the stomach. All of those things are space adaptation, and
Mm,
we call it space adaptation sickness.
mm. And thank goodness it
Yeah.
doesn't usually last that long, right? Like you kind of,
No, 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 no.
or a
No, you get over it. Couple of days,
couple
typically
days.
you're over, unless you take medication. There
Right.
are medications you can take to help you get over it very quickly. I think
Okay.
most of your listeners have probably been on a cruise ship. Well, the
Yeah.
first time in your life you ever go on a boat or a cruise ship, you probably get a little sick, a little queasy.
Right.
Space is the same way. You get a little sick when you first get up there, but you get over it. And
Uh,
once your body adapts to it, then you're doing just fine.
Right. Well, that
Mhm.
day was such a fun day because I mean, I had never been on a VIP experience. So for our listeners, we actually got to go behind the scenes. Disney took us wherever we wanted to go in the park, in the van, whatever attraction we wanted to go on. But after the orange attraction, I don't even do good on Dumbo or the teacups. And I mean, I was embarrassed, but I put my embarrassment aside. And you remember, I grabbed one of those little bags to take with me because I wasn't sure. And I thought, what a way to start my day. And it was awful for me. But I trucked through, and I got over it. But I know that later on, we went on to Space Mountain. Well, no, I didn't go on Space Mountain. Sorry. The boys and you went on Space Mountain. I'm just curious, what do you think of Space Mountain?
Well, Space Mountain was fun. I'm a kind of guy that I've always loved fast rides, roller coasters, and things
Oh,
like that. And Space Mountain, as I recall, was just a really, really fun ride. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But I'll be honest with you, amusement park rides during my adult life were fun to me, but they weren't overwhelming. I enjoyed them, but
mhm.
they tickled me. They made me laugh.
Oh.
Yeah, and my job in the Navy was to fly fighters. So
Okay.
when you fly fighters 5 days a week or 6 days a week, to get on a roller coaster is a
Oh.
little bit anticlimactic.
Yeah.
But having said that, I thoroughly enjoy high rise and twirling and tumbling. It's fun to me. It makes me laugh. I
Yeah.
thoroughly enjoy those rides. Even at this stage of my life, I enjoy them.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool because I am impressed because that's something that I'm the one that gets to hold the bags at the parks. When all the kids and Jacques go on to the ride, like those big ones, the big roller coasters and stuff like that. Because I just can't handle it. But that day, I want to share with some of the folks. So we actually had reservations at a restaurant. Remember that it was
I remember.
Oh, it was
Yes.
in Epcot at the oh my gosh, how come I can't remember? Oh, Coral Reef, of course, Coral Reef. And
Okay.
I remember getting there a bit early, but I'll back up here. So all day we were being scooted around back side of Disney, and sometimes, of course, out in the front. And Winston was wearing one of his astronaut jumpsuits, and we got stopped an awful lot of times. People were asking if you're a real astronaut, you know, as if you'd go in like plus 90-degree weather in a jumpsuit. But anyways, that was, I couldn't imagine being in that. And it was really interesting because you were very gracious, and people, if they asked you to take a photo with you, you stopped. And I remember our chaperone, she had to actually kind of have us bypass these folks that were coming up to, because they were, you know, you could have been doing that all day, Winston, right?
Right, that's right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So yeah, go ahead.
I'm not sorry. Go ahead. Thanks.
Oh, I was just going to say she was really lovely, and when we had dinner reservations that night, and I want to share. So I've got a photo, Winston, if you know what's coming up about Coral Reef Restaurant. So we arrived there a little bit on the early side, I remember, and they were actually going to take us and seat us a little earlier, and then they realized that our tables weren't ready because we needed 2 booths, and so they not pushed us, but they ushered us into that little butler's closet. Do you remember that? Oh my gosh.
I do remember.
There was 7 of us stuck in this like little butler's closet that was meant for like waiters just to, I don't know, either pick up extra dishes or whatever. And I mean, you and Jacques are 6'3", I guess, or something like that. So here we were stuffed in there, and we just it was so funny that we're on, you know, this lovely VIP tour. We're all stuck in the closet before dinner. You remember that?
But as I recall, they did not keep us in there very long.
No.
But the whole thing was so much fun because we were getting to know each other, and we were really enjoying each other's company.
Yeah.
You know, the Disney folks were just amazing.
They were.
Hospitality they showed to us. Just absolutely incredible. I have nothing but good things to say about all of my visits there, and that was no exception.
Yeah.
But as I recall, we didn't stay in that little butler's room very long. I think we got our table ready pretty quickly and sat us down. Yeah. Because we were trying to get done in time for the fireworks.
Well, I know. And, you know, we'll get to that part in a little bit. But I remember we all started giggling in the closet. And I remember looking at the people walking by, because it wasn't a large opening. It wasn't like you know, and people were looking at us, all these people in the closet laughing. I remember that because we sat together. I know Jacques I think he had the boys, and Alexi and like we sort of split up a little bit, but we were like back to back. And being left-handed, I have a very difficult time cutting any kind of meat, and with a steak knife, because the serrated edge is on the wrong side. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I sure do. Anyways, guys, I have to tell you, I told you Winston's very gracious, and he's very down to earth too, and pun intended, because I have a photo. He was very polite and not to assume anything when we were sitting at the table. And for some reason, I ordered a pork chop, which I think is one of the most difficult meats to cut. I don't know. It's more difficult than a steak. I had no idea what was in my mind. I was struggling. I was like almost sweating, struggling. And I was embarrassed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even cut my pork chop. Well, you guys, Winston was very kind to offer to cut my pork chop up. And here is a photo of Winston cutting my pork chop up for me. And something that is really fun, because, you know, these guys, when they do book signings or appearances, they'll sign a photo of themselves with a black Sharpie. I actually got 2 copies of that photo, and I actually signed with a black Sharpie to Winston, like it was a slice or something like that, and sent it to you.
I remember that. I was trying to remember, was it because of left-handed, or did you have an injury? Did you have a cast or an injury that day, did you?
No,
I guess not.
No, my injury was the fact that I was born with being left-handed and I couldn't cut anything. But
that's okay, because my mother was left-handed, my sister is left-handed, my daughter is left-handed.
Oh, there you go.
Left-handedness in the family.
Oh.
But No,
Oh.
I was glad to help out. It was just an overall fun evening, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was
That
really
was fun.
outstanding.
Well, I know that I remember when we first were sitting at the table and I noticed the salt and pepper shakers on there. And I actually have a salt and pepper shaker collection from around the world. I'm telling my audience, you already know this. But that was the first time that I told you about it. And the way you looked at me, I thought you thought I was going to put the salt and pepper shakers in my purse or something. And I realized after I told you that, oh my gosh, he must think I'm one of those people. So I backed up and had to tell you correctly that I was admiring the salt and pepper shakers, but I wasn't going to take them.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't worried about that.
Yeah.
But, you could probably buy those shakers in the souvenir shop or something. I
Oh,
don't know, but for sure.
probably.
But it's really interesting. You talk about salt and pepper shakers. For the audience, a little bit more about space. When you season your food in space,
Oh,
you can't use conventional salt and pepper shakers, of course, because the pepper and salt would float all over the room.
right.
What you have to use is liquid salt and liquid pepper.
Oh,
Your food is contained inside a packet. You have
right.
to slit the top of the packet and squirt a little bit of the liquid salt and liquid pepper into your food and let it permeate the food. Then you can
Ah,
eat it. So the
re-
things that we take for granted here on Earth become
yeah.
very difficult and very different in space.
Gosh, I never even thought about that. That's so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I do
Mhm.
remember that one of the drinks of you astronauts is Tang, and I remember I grew up on Tang because we didn't have like squeezed orange juice or frozen orange. We just didn't have that growing up, and we grew up with Tang, and I thought it was so cool that I grew up with the astronauts drink. Back in that
Most
day.
of us, most of us grew up with Tang. Of course, Tang is the commercial brand name of the
Oh,
drink that the astronauts stick in space.
oh, okay,
All of our drinks are contained in drink bags, like Capri Sun.
okay, okay.
Capri Suns came from the space program because that's how we drink our drinks in space.
Ah,
So you have the orange drink. The brand name is Tang, but it's just orange. And you got grapefruit coffee, tea, milk. All of those drinks are powdered. So they're
mm,
powdered drinks. Came from the space program. The orange one was the commercial name is Tang.
oh,
That's how
gotcha.
we drink all of our drinks in space.
Now, I've got to ask
Hmm.
you, what was your favorite meal in space? Since we're talking a little bit about food here.
People ask me that all the time. Let me tell you first about my favorite, the best tasting individual space food was the shrimp cocktail. Space shuttle shrimp
Shrimp
cocktail is
cocktail.
as good as any. Yes, it's as good as any you get in any restaurant.
Oh,
And of
wow.
course, it was dehydrated. You had to put the water back into it. You had to rehydrate it first. But
Wow.
once you rehydrate it, it's as good as any fancy restaurant.
Oh my
Now,
goodness.
overall meals in space, for breakfast, I typically had Mexican scrambled eggs. I'd have sausage patties to go along with that.
Mm,
Tortillas for bread. I'd have juice and then coffee to go with that. That'd be a typical breakfast.
mm-hmm.
But you could have cornflakes if you wanted to. But again,
Oh,
all of those foods were dehydrated, and there's
right.
a special process to rehydrate them.
My
We were
goodness.
in space on my second flight during the Thanksgiving holiday. So we actually
Okay.
had turkey dinners. There were the little dinners you get out of the grocery store. You eat turkey dinners. We had cranberry sauce, pumpkin, not pie, but pumpkin cookie type things. You can eat them with your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And because we were an international crew, we had a couple of international dishes. We had Japanese curry rice
Okay.
and some other food. So yeah, we have some pretty expensive meals up there. The food is pretty good. It's decent, but it's not like home cooking, of course.
No. Well,
But it's real food. You
yeah.
eat with a knife and fork and spoon, not
Mm-hmm.
like the old toothpaste
Oh,
tube stuff the early astronauts had to eat. We eat real
oh,
food with a knife and fork. But you have to be very careful because your food will float away, and you have to
oh,
chase it. You find yourself chasing your food
oh.
all over the space shuttle if you aren't careful.
Boy, talk about working for your meal, huh?
Yes, indeed.
Oh my gosh.
Well, you can either look at it as working for your meal or playing with your food.
Oh,
I
there you
tell
go.
my I I tell the children in my audiences that when you become an astronaut, only when you become an astronaut can you play with your food.
Yeah.
As long as you're a kid and mom says don't play with your food, then don't play with your food.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I remember
Mm.
that meal particularly because I'm trying to think of I think it was the youngest, Tristan, I think, or it was Christoph. I'm not sure which one it was, had gotten a new watch. And we were so engaged in conversation that we nearly missed the fireworks show. Now, that was something that was set up for our family. And he happened to look at his watch and it was 8:45 and the fireworks and all that had started at 9. And I'll never forget that. And I'm sure you didn't either, because we had to say really, really fast, hasty goodbyes. We knew we were going to see each other again and be in touch, but still it was kind of one of those evenings that you didn't want to end. And I remember we knew our way how to get there, and we were going very, very quickly because they had the sort of the dessert area set up for us down by the water where the fireworks were. That was the last thing I wanted to do, was eat more
Mhm.
food. But I remember
Mhm.
we had just made it there and the lights went out. And I heard that you didn't quite make it out of the park. You did kind of a little bit of traveling about, I think, with a chaperone, right? That night? In the
You
sense
know,
you
I tell you honestly, Kim, your memory is so much better than mine. I don't recall that. I remember we finished dinner. We had to rush to where the fireworks were going to be. We said our goodbyes, and I don't recall.
Oh, okay. Well,
I
I will tell people
I
what
don't.
happened because I felt so bad. I thought, gosh, we just should have grabbed you and all gone for dessert to watch the fireworks, because you guys, apparently the chaperone, who was supposed to get you out of the park, whatever way she was supposed to do so, got turned around. And apparently you guys were walking a lot in the dark that evening to get out of the park. And it took you guys a while, I heard. And I remember feeling so bad about that, but it was sort of like our time had come to an end. And I remember this beautiful spread that they had put out for us in the park, and like all the desserts and beverages you can imagine. And it was so sad because I couldn't have one. I was so stuffed. We were all so stuffed from our dinner. I think I managed a little juice or something because I was thirsty by the time we, got finished
Oh.
running with the kids that day. But I remember that day so fondly, Winston. And I will tell people as well, something that was a really neat connection for us was that we're both trumpet players. Now, I was a trumpet player in high school, but Winston is a professional trumpet player, jazz musician, and really, really awesome to listen to. We've had the good fortune to listen to him play at a couple of the clubs out on the East Coast. And, I just can't imagine going from a professional musician to an astronaut. And I was just curious to know, did you ever bring your trumpet up in space? That might sound like a silly question, but I was just curious. Do they ever allow instruments, or did you bring?
Actually, quite a few astronauts have taken instruments into space.
Okay.
You know, Chris Hadfield is probably the most well known because he was up there recently.
Yeah.
Chris is a very talented musician, played guitar and sang and wrote songs. In fact, Chris is Canadian
Yes, he
astronaut.
is. Yes, he is.
And Katie Coleman, of course, took a flute, and Susan Helps played keyboard. Ron McNair saxophone. So it's not unusual. A lot of engineers and scientists and astronauts and pilots are musicians.
Mm.
But answer your question, no, I did not get to take my trumpet into space simply because of the requirements on my missions did not allow. I didn't have the space for it.
Okay.
But astronauts have taken
Yeah.
instruments. It's a fun thing. Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
I bet.
Yeah.
And I mean, those are long hours. I mean, you guys are working, and long days, of course. You're working, but it's probably nice to have that the musical part of it too, a little bit of home, right? On board.
It is, but we all carry music. You could select and carry your own collection of music
Right.
and,
Right.
and play it either to yourself through your headphones or share it with everyone during the meal hour. So
Yeah.
yeah, music is
Okay.
a big part of the of our missions. Yeah,
Right.
at that time I took tapes because I could record what I wanted.
Oh,
It,
sure.
it, it was before the era where you could record your own CDs
Right.
and thumb drives and so on. So I took
Yeah.
tapes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's
Absolutely.
neat. I want to ask you. So, because I know you've been to Walt Disney World now many times without your
Oh
children.
yes.
Yeah, and I
Hmm.
remember, we've had some delicious meals together there, and also in your neck of the woods around town. And I just was curious to know, because you're very imaginative and creative, as well science oriented, of course. But if you had a chance to create an attraction in Tomorrowland, what might that look like, Winston?
Yeah, I thought about that a little bit, and I think the attraction would be a virtual reality attraction where a person could put on, say, a helmet and some gloves, and they would be walking on the moon or walking on Mars.
Oh,
I
wow.
think that would be cool, where the guests would actually see themselves in a Martian environment with their spacesuit on, walking on Mars or working on Mars, harvesting some rocks or soil samples or whatever. I
Gosh,
think that would be a cool one.
that sounds really neat. And it's very possible too. It was interesting, and I know Jacques is on the line, and well, on the he's listening, and so hopefully he can type this in. But really, like many years ago, before we had the kids, in Future World at Epcot, they actually had an opportunity. They were pulling different people out to try some virtual reality goggles, for a program,
Hmm.
and actually part of I think we saw part of Aladdin for the Philharmonic, Mickey's Philharmonic. And when it was showing Aladdin and Jasmine going Jasmine going along on that magic carpet, I remember that. And it was
Hmm.
something that was developed by Carnegie Mellon, and they were testing it
Hmm.
out on the guests. And
Right.
Randy Pausch is the fellow that was one of the creators of it. And I remember it was so futuristic for us, because that was a long time ago. That was
Right.
well over 20 years ago. I don't know how many, 25,
Uh-huh.
26 years
Yes.
ago, 27 years
Yes.
ago. And I think that it was very it would have been really interesting. I mean, it's very possible. So many things are possible to create, and I think that would be really really neat, because they could even do like the textures that you would be walking on, as to add to, like, maybe like a 4D experience, really, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, the
Neat.
technology has advanced so much over the past few decades. We were training, some of our training was done with virtual reality back
Okay.
in the 90s. Well,
Right.
now it's available pretty much to anyone out in public, at least
Right.
almost.
Yeah.
So Disney certainly could develop such an attraction. That there are other things to be considered besides the technology itself.
Right. Yeah.
What's going to be the theme? How do you get X number of people in and out of it in a quick and fast manner? And how do there are all kinds of things to be considered.
Yeah.
But I think that would be a great attraction to add to Disney World.
Oh, for sure. And something, I mean, we're kind of on the cusp of the program, more programs. I think Orion is the next one that's coming up for manned
Yes,
spacecraft, right?
yes,
And
hmm,
wouldn't
hmm,
that be a really cool uh, concept to integrate for, the just developing young people's minds and preparing them for the future space, because we've had that lull, right, since the shuttle program has been put aside. And I think as you know, I love the educational part of the space program. And I know Walt embraced the space program as well, and really thought
yes,
outside the box, right? So I think that
yes,
would
absolutely.
wouldn't that be a great way to introduce something like that to the masses, young and old, to kind of get a feeling for that. Oh gosh. Winston, thank you.
Before we go real quick, yeah, Disney has done a great job of integrating space technology and all into its attractions. And one of the things that's happened since you and I first met, you may have experienced, is one called Mission to Mars. That's a Disney attraction. And it's
Right.
actually built on a centrifuge, so the person riding it actually feels the G forces, not the same as a real launch, but you actually feel G forces,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks as though you're flying through space and you land on Mars. Listen,
Okay.
so Disney's already done it, and they are always out ahead of the game to combine the entertainment with the education. They're just fantastic organization that touches a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, sure does. Gosh, it sure touched mine. And I'm just so grateful that you auctioned yourself off for that evening, because it just made sense. It was perfect sense to do that, to spend a day at Disney with you, and to have met a good friend. And for you folks that are listening, I actually write about that story, and I titled it "A Friendship Forged" in book 2 of my series. And it was just so much fun that day. I'm smiling now about some of the memories as I'm going back about that day. But Winston, I just really, really want to thank you for coming on the show tonight and sharing my 50th podcast. I didn't know how many I would
Well,
make it to, but it's 50 already. So yeah.
Well, it's my pleasure, and congratulations to you on your golden anniversary or your golden number of
Thank
podcasts.
you.
It's outstanding. Yeah.
Thank
Well, this
you.
has been fun for me, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, well, thank you, and say hi to Marilyn for us too, and take
I
care.
sure will.
All right.
Take care
Okay.
now.
Good night. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.
Oh my goodness. That was just absolutely lovely. He is just such a wonderful human being, both him and his wife. I've gone shopping with his wife before, and every time we go out to Florida, we really try to get together and stay in touch. So they've seen the kids grow up and become who they've become. And I'm so grateful to Disney in so many ways, and had no idea that my journey with a park visit would lead to a lifelong friendship with Winston and his wife Marilyn, with our family. And I was this morning, when I was on speaking to the University of Memphis students, I let them know, how this journey as an author and a podcaster, just the people I've met, the experiences I've had, the places I've gone, has really been surreal for me. And I'm so glad that I've made it to 50 shows, and really look forward to what's coming in the future. And want to thank you guys all so very much for joining me on this special night, my 50th anniversary. And I hope you guys got a lot out of what Disney and NASA, how they connected, as well as hearing it right from an astronaut, some of the things that he experienced in space. And I've known him for a long time, and even I learned about some things tonight. And before I go, I want to say a good night now to my friend Gina, to Stan, to Ava, who's listening all the way from Poland. Danny, I saw Danny on earlier, and and Tisha. I think Tisha was on. I had seen, and I'm not sure who else was on. I'm sorry, I can't just see everybody at this time. But I want to wish you guys a very good night, wonderful week. If you are in any snow area like we are in Seattle, stay warm and be safe. And we will see you next week on the Positively Disney Phone In Show, the 51st episode. Good night, all. Bye for now.